Okay, so today is Sunday, and I promise you YouTube videos every Wednesday and Sunday. Do you see some procrastination going on? Yeah, for sure, me too. Okay, so today's YouTube video, I'm going to be driving my car to go see my mother for Mother's Day. Okay, so back to the farm related stuff. I'm going to be talking about how to get started in owning your own livestock. I feel like agriculture is so unbelievably hard to just up and start into without being married into it or born into it, or just some sort of like freak luck accident that you're getting it, you know? So these are some tips and tricks that I think, from my personal experience and knowledge and understanding of agriculture, that if you were to start your own cattle herd, that this would be stuff that I would start with and try to do. So there's different avenues. There's the person who isn't born into it, and the person who hasn't married it, and the person who has absolutely no connection to it whatsoever. So this person, it's going to be super hard for you. This is like, you're going to have the biggest challenge. That's you. The person that has zero connections to anything. So my suggestions for this person who has zero connection is to start making connection. Whether that be talking to a local farmer, talking to somebody you know who has cattle, whether that be getting on Facebook and looking up cattle groups, whatever. Make yourself a connection, find a connection, and somebody in your area that has livestock and is doing this, and talk to them. Sometimes people are just really kind-hearted and they'll help you get your foot in the door. So this is what I suggest to you. I think making connection is the first step. After you've made a connection, this goes into everybody else. I mean, more than likely what I'm going to start talking about. But after you make your connection, go to the FSA office. And I say the FSA office for a lot of reasons. The FSA office is a big advocate. That's all they do. So they want you to succeed. You're going to talk to a loan officer there, and they're going to give you a novel to fill out. And that's their application. A novel, okay? But it's worth it. It's way worth it. The reasons why it's worth it is because getting a loan through them is usually a little bit easier. They have different types of loans that you can get, and their interest rate is so low. So low. This is how you get ahead in this business. You have to do business strategies. So if you go to a regular bank, you're looking at an interest rate of probably 8%, 6 to 8, I'm going to say somewhere in there. And the FSA interest rate, I know for a fact on some of my loans, I have 2.5 interest and I have 3. Like, that's so cheap. So use it. Use the resource. I know a lot of people complain because they're like, oh, well, the FSA, there's just so much paperwork. There's no reason I would want to do that. Like, that takes too much time. But it saves you money. And maybe that could be, you know, your make or break if you're going to succeed in this or not. So, yeah, I mean, I think a little hard work goes a long ways. I'm not saying the application's easy. I'm just saying, like, it's long. You have to write, like, I remember when I first did mine, I had to write, like, why or how I was connected to agriculture, what would make me a good advocate for it. And, I mean, they go by years of experience if you've had any with it. And, like, there's just a lot of different things. But it's cheap interest, and it's money for this. Like, that's my first suggestion as far as financing. I know a lot of people do, like, there's shares for cattle. So if you can get into that kind of thing, where, say, Joe Bob owns 100 head of cattle, but he needs help, and rather than paying you a paycheck, he would cut you a share of his livestock for your labor. Like, it would be a percentage of the calf check, or even maybe you could work out some sort of deal where you get X amount of calves out of the year from it. So I think that would be a good start, or a good way to do it. So basically, for the person who has zero connections, you need to start making connections. Try talking to local people who farm, anything like that. Make a connection, make friends, talk to people. That's the first step. So I think I pretty much covered that one. I mean, after you make your connection, then you can start looking at the finance options and getting routes, things to lead you down. To the person who works for agriculture and you don't own anything, but you're an employee of a farmer and you want to own cows, talk to your boss. Ask your boss. I know a lot of guys in our area that have like 10, 15 cows, and that's part of their paycheck. They get free feed and grass, like housing for these cows, and that's in lieu of part of their paycheck. So with that being said, you have X amount of cows in your own name. That's a start. And you get to collect the calf check. That's your money. So from there, you have a lot of avenues. If you get the opportunity to collect money off of your cattle and you choose to save it, to expand, to look for other different scenarios where you can maybe rent grass and build your own herd, that would be a good start. If you have a land or an owner, a boss who would let you have like 10 head, 5 head, something to get your foot in the door. And a lot of guys will do that because really, if you have 400 head of cattle, that 5 isn't gonna, it's not a hair off their back. I mean, it's not gonna be a big deal. It'd be okay. So for the guy who's working for the farmer, that's my suggestion, is talking about maybe doing some ownership for your pay or something along those lines, labor, like get your foot in the door through the boss. If the boss says no, I don't want to do that, I would suggest looking around your area for grass that's available for rent. And I would suggest talking to those people and seeing what they have to offer and what your avenues are, and using the FSA. The FSA, I cannot stress enough how much I think the FSA is such a good thing for agriculture. I think that you could have so many more opportunities using the FSA than a regular bank because of the interest rate, and the guys in there want you to succeed. So if you can find some grass and you can get a loan and buy cows cheap enough, you could make it cash flow, because there's a lot of guys who have debt on cattle and they have rent to pay for grass and they still make it work. So you would have probably an operating line, is what they would call it, and then your regular note for cattle. So it's two separate deals. The operating line would be due annually, and your note would be due, I think it's 7 years is the term that they use. And so you'd have your annual payment for that loan every year for 7 years on your cows. So it's a good way to get ahead. I think that that's just a really great option. I think that's something you need to do. So I covered that guy, the guy who works for the farmer. Also, it's just connections. I think connections are so important. Let's go to the guy who's married into it. Usually I'm going to say guy because usually girls aren't the ones that want to like take any interest into cattle or like owning their own. They're just content. So the guy who marries into it, talk to your dad-in-law. Tell him your situation. Tell him what you want to do. Communicate. Make connections. 9 times out of 10, he's probably going to want to help you because you're married to his daughter. He wants you to take care of her, provide for her, be financially stable. So he's going to try to help you. So that's the first place I would start. Express your interest in it. Now, don't be pushy. Nobody likes a pushy guy. Like, don't be like, yeah, I want to own these cows. I'm just going to take over, and when you die, I'm going to take these cows. Like, don't do that. But just like mention and express your interest in livestock, and I guarantee you're probably going to have some help. And if he doesn't help you, he's going to find ways for you to succeed because he wants you to succeed. So that's a really good situation. I mean, not everybody has that situation. Obviously, it's a lot more difficult for the guy who has no connections, but connections are key. I think connections are a big deal in agriculture. I think that's how you get a lot of good things going. I think obviously agriculture is a really hard industry to even be in, so people rely on each other. It's like a big support group. So connections. And if you're born into it, this is my favorite one because obviously I was born into agriculture. And I did not start off by owning my own cows. I begged and I whined and I was obnoxious. I had to prove myself before I got my cows. But I'm telling you, just don't give up. Like, if you want it bad enough, do not give up. Don't give up, okay? So this is how I got my first 18 head of cows. That's what I started off with. I whined, and I wanted them bad, and my dad didn't want to pay me. So it was a good step for me to be in his world, his business industry, because I wasn't getting a paycheck from him. A good opportunity for me to get some income without him actually cutting me a check, and supplying me grass for 18 cows wasn't any harm off his back. So that's what happened. That's how I started, and I got a loan through the FSA, and my dad was like, if you do this, I'm not co-signing. And that's another great thing about the FSA. There's no co-signer. So he said, I'm not co-signing, and you need to get this loan on your own. And I was like, okay, well, I had a good situation because I wasn't going to be paying for grass. So that should have helped me a little bit automatically out the gate. But I went and applied. Pooped my pants waiting to hear if I was going to get accepted or not. And I got accepted in about 18 head. So that's kind of how I started. And then I lost a cow when I first got him. I don't even remember what happened. This is like 5 years ago. I'm not sure. It was like, I think magnesium deficiency was what happened. Something along those lines. I don't really know. But anyway, so lost a cow. And I was just like, I was devastated because I did not want to have to buy a cow for my dad. Like, I didn't want to have to take from his herd to make mine back. And nobody took me serious. And I mean nobody. I would call sale barns and I was like, hey, like, I just need to buy one cow. Like, is it possible to just have one cow, like, that I could buy and not go and sit for the whole entire deal and buy a cow or whatever? And I remember I don't know if I use names of sale barns in this or not. I'm gonna name my good sale barn, and then I'm gonna not name my bad sale barn, okay? So my bad sale barn, the guy pretty much was like just a jerk on the phone. He didn't take me serious. He was rude. Said, yeah, you're just gonna have to come down and buy a cow. Like, it wasn't helpful. So I was at a bar in Kearney with my friend, and she's like, hey, this girl, her dad owns the sale barns in Kearney and Lexington. Like, I know her. You should talk to her. And I was like, okay. So she introduced me to her friend, and I told her my situation. I was like, hey, I just started with my cow business. Like, I need one cow, and it's like really hard to just get one cow. And she's like, oh, here's my number. I'll help you. And I was like, okay. So next morning, after the alcohol, goes out of your body, we talked, and she's like, do you still want me to help you? And I was like, yeah, very serious about that. That was a real conversation. And I've used her pretty much ever since, because that one person who helps me with my one cow, you're gonna help me when I get big too. Like, I don't forget you. Like, you're a big deal in my world. So I use Lexington Livestock Market. Like, Huss's in Kearney is also hers. Like, absolutely, because I was treated so well, and I wasn't laughed at, and nobody was rude to me. So yeah. And I remember the first year I sold my calves, my 18 head. This is funny because, like, nobody would really take the time, to like look at the 18 head to market them. But her dad, Rick, he came out and he looked at my 18 head of calves, and he was like, yeah, they look good, and like telling me if I should sell or not. And like, I'm like big now, I'm like, holy crap, like, these are mine. So connections, like, I don't know, don't be afraid to talk to people. That's a huge part in this industry, I think. Like, it's a big deal. Connections. So talking to people. But that's how I started. That's how I grew. I don't know. Those are my suggestions for you. Agriculture is definitely a hard industry to be. Just wake up and farm. or ranch one day. Like, it's, you have to figure out a way in it. It's hard. So with that being said, I think that's my advice to you. That's what I got. I'm trying to come up with videos that help you. Like, I want you to watch me for entertainment, yeah, but I want to be educational at the same time. So if you could comment below things that you want me to talk about or explain, or, you know, whatever, that would be helpful. Also, could you help me get to 500 subscribers? Okay, thanks. Okay, to the person who is born into agriculture, actually scratch that. This is your socialing. Like, this is how socialism works. Not socialism, socializing.